Imagine standing at your own wedding reception as your best man announces to 300 guests that he's been sleeping with your bride. For James, this wasn't hypothetical, it was reality. When his best friend of 20 years tried to destroy his wedding day with a vicious lie, most people would have reacted with rage or collapsed in humiliation. But our guest chose strategy instead. I'm Eliza, and today on Wedding Day Justice, we're exploring how one groom transformed a best man's betrayal into a moment of profound vindication, proving that when it comes to wedding day sabotage, the best revenge isn't losing control, it's taking it back.
Thank you, Eliza. I'm sharing this story because I want others to know that even at your most vulnerable moment, strategic thinking can transform disaster into triumph. Let me tell you what happened when my oldest friend decided our wedding day was the perfect opportunity to destroy my marriage before it began. Looking back, I should have seen it coming. The warning signs were there for months, but I was too focused on our wedding plans to notice how Derek's behavior had changed. Derek and I had been best friends since college. We'd been roommates for 3 years, started our careers together, and even dated the same woman once, though not at the same time, thankfully. When I met Olivia 4 years ago, Derek was the first person I introduced her to. They seemed to hit it off well, and when I proposed 18 months later, asking Derek to be my best man felt like the most natural decision in the world. But something shifted about 6 months before our wedding date. Derek started making odd comments whenever Olivia couldn't make it to our usual Thursday night drinks. "Working late again, huh?" he'd say with a smirk. "Nurses sure have unpredictable schedules." The way he emphasized unpredictable made my stomach tighten, but I brushed it off. Olivia had noticed it too. "Is everything okay with Derek?" she asked one night after he'd left our dinner party early, barely saying goodbye. "He seems, I don't know, distant with me lately. Did I do something wrong?" "He's just stressed about work," I assured her, though I wasn't convinced myself. Derek had been passed over for promotion twice that year while my software development career was taking off. I'd recently been made team lead with a substantial raise, enough that Olivia and I could afford the wedding venue we'd originally thought was out of our price range. A restored Victorian mansion overlooking Lake Michigan, with gardens that would be in full bloom for our June ceremony. 18 days before the wedding, I met Derek for lunch, hoping to reconnect. The bachelor party had been the previous weekend, a surprisingly subdued affair where Derek had gotten blackout drunk while the rest of us had a good time golfing and later at a steakhouse. I wanted to make sure he was okay with his best man responsibilities. "So the speech," I said casually, picking at my sandwich. "You've got something prepared, right?" Derek's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite identify. "Oh, I've got a speech all right," he said, taking a long pull from his beer. "It'll be one nobody forgets." The hair on the back of my neck stood up. "What does that mean?" "Relax, James," he laughed, but it didn't reach his eyes. "I'm just saying I'll do you proud, best man duties and all that." That night, I told Olivia about the strange lunch. She sat on our bed, folding the pocket squares we'd ordered for the groomsmen, her brow furrowed in concentration. "I don't want to add to your stress," she said carefully, "but yesterday Derek texted me asking if we could meet for coffee. Said he needed to discuss something important about the wedding. I told him I was too busy with final fittings, but it felt weird." "He texted you directly?" That was unusual. Derek and Olivia had always communicated through group chats or when we were all together. "Yes, and when I said I couldn't meet, he replied with 'Your loss. Some things are better said in person than at a wedding.' What does that even mean?" She showed me the text and something cold settled in my stomach. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m., I made a decision that would ultimately save our wedding day. I called my cousin Marcus, who runs a private security firm. "I need your help," I told him, "and I need you to be discreet." "You want me to bug your best man?" Marcus asked incredulously when we met for coffee the next morning. The early summer sun was streaming through the cafe windows, catching the skepticism in his eyes. "Not exactly," I clarified, leaning forward. "I want to be prepared in case Derek tries something at the wedding. The way he's been acting, I think he's planning to sabotage my wedding day." As I explained the situation, Derek's increasing bitterness, the strange comments, the text to Olivia, Marcus's expression shifted from skepticism to concern. "This is your best friend we're talking about," he reminded me. "Are you sure you're not overthinking this?" "I hope I am," I admitted, "but if I'm right and I do nothing?" Marcus nodded slowly. Okay, here's what we can do. I'll have two of my guys at the wedding. They'll blend in as guests. We'll place small microphones on the head table and near the DJ setup. If Derek says anything inappropriate during his speech, we'll have it recorded and my team can intervene discreetly. And if I'm wrong, then you've spent some money on peace of mind and no one ever needs to know. I hesitated. This felt like a betrayal of its own kind, preparing for my best friend to stab me in the back. But the memory of Derek's words, "It'll be one nobody forgets," steeled my resolve. There's one more thing, I said. I need a recording device on me personally, something that can capture private conversations. Marcus raised an eyebrow but didn't question me further. 2 days later, he delivered a small button camera and microphone that could be sewn into my tuxedo jacket. The hardest part was deciding whether to tell Olivia. We'd always been honest with each other, but I didn't want to add to her pre-wedding stress if my suspicions were unfounded. After a restless night, I decided to tell her a partial truth. "I'm concerned about Derek," I said over breakfast. "He's been acting strange, and I'm worried he might have too much to drink at the reception and say something inappropriate." Olivia set down her coffee mug. As a trauma nurse, she had an uncanny ability to stay calm in crisis. "You think he'd try to ruin our wedding?" "I hope not," I said honestly, "but I've asked Marcus to have a couple of his security people there just in case. They'll look like regular guests." She studied my face and I knew she could tell I wasn't sharing everything. "There's more, isn't there?" I took a deep breath. "I think Derek might be jealous of us, of my promotion, of everything going well in my life while he's struggling, and I'm afraid that jealousy has turned into something ugly." Olivia reached across the table and took my hand. "Then we'll be prepared. What's the plan?" I explained about the microphones and the recording device. Rather than being upset, Olivia's practical nurse's mind kicked into problem-solving mode. "We should have a signal," she suggested. "If things go south during his speech, I'll squeeze your hand 3 times. That means I'm with you, whatever happens next." "You're not angry that I'm essentially spying on the wedding party?" "James," she said firmly, "I've spent enough time in the ER to know that prevention is better than treatment. If Derek is planning something malicious, I'd rather catch it before it does real damage." As the wedding day approached, I found myself watching Derek closely at the rehearsal dinner. He seemed subdued, nursing a whiskey and speaking minimally during the toasts from our parents. When it was his turn to say a few words, he stood, glass in hand, and gave what seemed like a heartfelt tribute to our friendship. "To James and Olivia," he concluded, raising his glass, "may tomorrow be everything you've dreamed of." His eyes met mine, and for a moment I thought I'd imagined the whole thing. Maybe Derek was just going through a rough patch. Maybe my suspicions were completely unfounded. Then I noticed his hand was shaking slightly as he set down his glass, and he avoided Olivia completely when saying goodnight. That night I texted Marcus, "Everything still set for tomorrow?" His reply came immediately, "All systems go, team will be in place by 2 p.m. I stared at my tuxedo hanging on the closet door of my hotel room, thinking about the tiny device sewn into its lapel. Was I betraying my best friend by expecting the worst, or was I protecting the most important day of my life? Either way, in less than 24 hours, I'd have my answer. Our wedding day dawned with the kind of perfect weather that wedding planners dream about. Clear blue skies, 72 degrees, with just enough breeze to make the garden's cherry blossoms dance. The Victorian mansion looked straight out of a fairy tale, with its wraparound porch adorned with garlands of white roses and eucalyptus, exactly matching the $3,200 floral package Olivia had agonized over for weeks. I stood in the groom's suite, adjusting my bow tie for the 5th time when there was a knock at the door. My brother Ryan, one of my groomsmen, poked his head in. "Derek's here," he said, "and he's already hitting the scotch pretty hard." My stomach tightened. "How hard?" "Let's just say he's on his 3rd glass and it's not even noon." I nodded, trying to keep my expression neutral. "Keep an eye on him, will you? Make sure he stays presentable." Ryan gave me a curious look but agreed. As he left, I checked my phone. A text from Marcus, "Team in position, audio systems active, relax and enjoy your day." Easier said than done. The ceremony itself was perfect. When Olivia appeared at the end of the petal-strewn aisle, I forgot all about Derek and my worries. She was radiant in her fitted lace gown, which caught the golden afternoon light in a way that made her look like she was glowing from within. Her father, a stoic man who rarely showed emotion, had tears streaming down his face as he walked her toward me. As we exchanged the vows we'd written together, I caught glimpses of our 175 guests. Olivia's large Filipino family filling several rows, my smaller but equally emotional family, our college friends, colleagues, and neighbors. The $1,500 string quartet played softly as we slipped rings onto each other's fingers. When the officiant pronounced us husband and wife, the cheers were so loud that a flock of birds took flight from the nearby trees. It wasn't until the reception that I noticed Derek again. He was standing near the bar, his best man's boutonniere slightly askew, watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read. When our eyes met, he raised his glass in a mock toast before downing its contents. "Everything okay?" Olivia whispered, appearing at my side in a cloud of perfume and tulle. "Perfect," I assured her, though my eyes stayed on Derek. "You look stunning, Mrs. Mitchell." She laughed, the sound like music. "Not so bad yourself, Mr. Mitchell." The reception proceeded according to plan. The cocktail hour on the mansion's sprawling lawn featured signature drinks named after our pets. The $12,000 catering spread received appreciative murmurs as servers circulated with trays of Filipino-American fusion appetizers that honored both our backgrounds. Olivia's mother had insisted on adding lumpia and pancit to the menu, while my parents had advocated for the miniature lobster rolls that represented my New England roots. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the reception tent, the 175 guests took their seats at tables adorned with hand-calligraphed place cards and centerpieces of garden roses and ranunculus. The head table was positioned at the front, with Olivia and me in the center, flanked by our wedding party, including Derek, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the photos. After the maid of honor's touching speech about how Olivia and I were proof that dating apps sometimes get it right, it was Derek's turn. As he stood, microphone in hand, I felt Olivia's fingers intertwine with mine under the table. 3 squeezes, our signal. She'd noticed his demeanor too. Derek swayed slightly as he faced the crowd, his eyes glassy but focused. He'd switched from scotch to champagne, judging by the flute in his hand, but the effect was the same. He was definitely intoxicated. "Ladies and gentlemen," he began, his voice carrying across the suddenly quiet tent. "I've known James since we were 18 years old. That's 15 years of friendship, 15 years of secrets." The way he emphasized secrets made my blood run cold. I glanced at Marcus, positioned near the back of the tent. He gave me a subtle nod. The recording equipment was capturing everything. "James and I have been through a lot together," Derek continued, his words slightly slurred. "College exams, bad breakups, career disappointments. I was there through all of it. I was there when he met Olivia on that dating app 4 years ago." He paused, taking another swig of champagne. The guests were watching with a mixture of anticipation and growing discomfort. Olivia's grip on my hand tightened. "What most of you don't know," Derek said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "is that I was also there 3 months ago when James confessed something to me over drinks." My heart hammered against my ribs. This was it, the moment I'd been dreading. "He told me," Derek continued, his eyes now fixed directly on me, "that he wasn't sure about going through with this wedding." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Olivia's mother gasped audibly. I kept my expression neutral, though my hands were shaking beneath the table. "And do you know why?" Derek's voice grew louder. "Because 2 weeks before that, James slept with his coworker Melissa after the company Christmas party, the same Melissa who conveniently couldn't make it today." The tent fell completely silent. I could feel every eye on me, judging, questioning, condemning. Olivia's hand had gone rigid in mine. "So here's to the happy couple." Derek raised his glass, a cruel smile playing at his lips. "May your marriage be more faithful than your engagement." As he finished his toast, the silence was deafening. For a moment, no one moved. Then Olivia slowly turned to look at me, her eyes searching my face for the truth. It was time to end this, exactly as I had planned. The silence in the reception tent was absolute. 200 pairs of eyes shifted between Derek's smug face and my supposedly caught-in-the-act expression. Olivia's mother had her hand pressed to her mouth in horror. Her father half rose from his chair, his face darkening with anger. Even the servers had frozen in place, champagne bottles suspended mid-pour. I looked at Olivia, whose eyes were wide but, surprisingly to everyone but me, not filled with tears or accusation. Instead, they held a question: "Are we doing this?" I gave her the slightest nod before turning to Derek, who was still standing with his champagne flute raised, triumph written across his flushed face. That's quite a story, Derek, I said, my voice steady as I rose to my feet. Fascinating, actually, especially considering I've never worked with anyone named Melissa. Derek's smile faltered slightly. You know exactly who I'm talking about, the marketing consultant, the one with the red hair. You mean Melanie from accounting, I clarified, who's been happily married to her wife for 6 years and is currently on maternity leave with their new baby, that Melanie. A ripple of confused murmurs spread through the crowd. Derek's triumphant expression began to crack. You know who you slept with, he insisted, his voice rising. Don't try to deny it now, you told me everything that night at O'Malley's. I nodded thoughtfully. O'Malley's, 3 months ago, that's an interesting detail, Derek. I reached into my tuxedo jacket and pulled out my phone. Because 3 months ago I wasn't even in the country. Olivia and I were in the Philippines visiting her grandparents. We have about 400 photos to prove it, not to mention passport stamps and airline receipts. Derek's face paled slightly, but he recovered quickly. It was 4 months ago then, you're trying to confuse the issue. 4 months ago was February, Olivia spoke up, her voice calm despite the tension. James was recovering from appendicitis surgery. You visited him in the hospital, Derek. Remember, you brought that awful fruit basket with the mushy pears. More murmurs from the guests, this time with a different tone. Derek's eyes darted around the room, noticing the shift in atmosphere. You're lying, he said, but his voice had lost its certainty. You both are, I know what James told me. No, Derek, I said quietly, you're the one who's lying, and I can prove it. I nodded to Marcus, who pressed a button on his phone. Suddenly, Derek's voice filled the tent, projected clearly through the reception sound system. James has no idea what I'm planning, recorded Derek said, his words slightly slurred but unmistakable. He thinks I'm writing some sappy best man speech, but I'm going to destroy him. I'll tell everyone he cheated on Olivia. No one will believe his denials, not her family, not their friends. Their perfect day will be ruined, just like he ruined my life. The voice on the recording belonged to a woman I didn't recognize, likely one of the bartenders at Derek's regular pub. That's pretty extreme, man. What'd he do to deserve that? Everything always works out for James, Derek's recorded voice continued, bitter and resentful. The promotion that should have been mine, the perfect relationship, the big house. Meanwhile, I'm still stuck in the same position. My girlfriend left me and I can barely make rent. It's time he lost something for once. I gestured and Marcus stopped the recording. The silence that followed was different from before, heavy with shock and second-hand embarrassment. Derek stood frozen, microphone still in hand, his face drained of color. That's not, he stammered. You recorded me, that's illegal. Actually, Marcus spoke up from the back, Illinois is a one-party consent state for recordings, and the bar you were at has signs clearly stating that premises are under audio and video surveillance for security purposes, so it's completely legal. Derek's eyes darted wildly around the room, searching for sympathy but finding none. Olivia's father, who had been ready to confront me minutes earlier, now fixed Derek with a glare that could have melted steel. I've known you for 15 years, Derek, I said, keeping my voice level despite the anger and hurt churning inside me. You were my roommate, my confidant, my best friend. I trusted you with everything, including the most important day of my life. I paused, letting the weight of the betrayal sink in, not just for him, but for everyone witnessing this moment. When you started acting strangely weeks ago, I hoped it was just pre-wedding stress. When you made odd comments about Olivia's schedule, I made excuses for you. But when you texted my fiancé asking to meet privately, suggesting you had something to reveal at our wedding, that's when I knew I needed to protect us from whatever you were planning. Derek's face contorted with a mixture of rage and humiliation. You don't understand, he hissed. You've always had everything handed to you. The promotion was the result of 3 years of extra certifications and weekend projects, I finished for him. Projects I invited you to join, but you were always too busy playing video games or sleeping off hangovers. Olivia stood now, her hand still firmly in mine. Derek, I considered you a friend. I welcomed you into my family's home for holidays. My mother taught you how to make pancit because you said you loved it. Her voice was steady but tinged with disappointment. And this is how you repay that friendship, by trying to destroy our wedding day with lies. Derek's mother, seated at table 3, had her head in her hands. His father stared stonily at his plate. The second-hand embarrassment in the room was palpable. I think it's time for you to leave, I said quietly. As if on cue, two of Marcus's security team appeared at Derek's sides, the same men who had been posing as distant cousins all day. One of them gently but firmly removed the microphone from Derek's hand. "This isn't over," Derek snarled, but the threat sounded hollow even to his own ears. "Actually, it is," I replied. "Your things have been removed from the groomsmen's suite and placed in a room at the hotel across the street. The room is paid for tonight only. There's also an Uber gift card for you to get home tomorrow. After that, I don't want to hear from you again." The security team began to escort Derek toward the exit. As they passed Olivia's family tables, her grandmother, a tiny Filipino woman in her 80s who had flown 14 hours to be here, made a sharp gesture with her hand that needed no translation in any culture. "Wait," I called when they reached the tent entrance. Derek turned, perhaps hoping for a last-minute reprieve. Instead, I said clearly enough for everyone to hear, "I want my apartment key back." Derek's face flushed deep red as he dug into his pocket and threw the key on the ground before being led away. No one moved to pick it up. As the tent flap closed behind him, the silence stretched for one more excruciating moment. Then, from somewhere in the back, a single person began to clap. Others joined in, the applause spreading until the entire reception was filled with it, not celebration exactly, but solidarity, support, understanding. I turned to our guests, still holding Olivia's hand. "I'm sorry you all had to witness that," I said sincerely. "That wasn't the toast we had planned." "No kidding," called one of my college friends, breaking the tension. A ripple of nervous laughter spread through the crowd. "If it's all right with everyone," Olivia said, her voice strong despite the ordeal, "we'd like to get back to celebrating. I believe we were promised a first dance." As if on cue, the band began to play the opening notes of our chosen song. I turned to my wife, and saw in her eyes exactly what I needed: love, trust, and the absolute certainty that we had weathered our first crisis as a married couple with flying colors. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Mitchell?" I asked, extending my hand. "Always, Mr. Mitchell," she replied with a smile that outshone every light in the tent. The remainder of our wedding reception unfolded like a dream, but a good one this time, not the nightmare Derek had tried to create. The band played our carefully selected playlist, from our first dance to At Last, through the father-daughter dance to the Filipino folk song that had Olivia's relatives flooding the dance floor to teach my rhythmically challenged family members the steps. There was an unspoken agreement among our guests to move past the Derek incident. No one brought it up directly, though I caught snippets of hushed conversations near the dessert table and bar. "Can you believe he would?" and "always seemed a bit off to me," and "thank goodness they were prepared." Olivia's mother found me between dances, gripping my hands in hers with surprising strength. "You protected my daughter's happiness today," she said, her accent thickening with emotion. "That makes you a good man, a good husband already." "I just wish it hadn't been necessary," I admitted. "Life will always have Dereks," she said with the wisdom of her 67 years. "What matters is how we handle them. You handled yours with dignity." My own father, never one for emotional displays, clapped me on the shoulder later as I stood watching Olivia twirl with her young cousins, her wedding gown catching the light from the string lights overhead. "That friend of yours," he said gruffly, "known him since you were kids?" "Yes," I replied, unsure where he was going with this. "Never liked him," Dad declared. "Too much talk, not enough substance. Your mother thought the same." I chuckled despite myself. "You could have mentioned that before I made him my best man." "Not my place," he shrugged, "but I'm proud of how you handled it. Kept your cool, didn't sink to his level. That's the Mitchell way." Coming from my stoic father, this was the equivalent of a tearful speech. As the night progressed, the incident began to feel more distant, like a strange interlude in an otherwise perfect celebration. Olivia and I cut the 4-tier cake her cousin had spent 3 days creating, a masterpiece of vanilla bean layers with mango filling that honored her Filipino heritage. We tossed the bouquet, caught by my surprised sister, and the garter, caught by Olivia's equally surprised brother, to much hilarity. By the time we made our exit through a tunnel of sparklers held by our cheering guests, Derek's attempted sabotage felt like it had happened in another lifetime. Olivia and I collapsed into the vintage Rolls-Royce we'd splurged on for the evening, finally alone for the first time as husband and wife. "Well," she said, kicking off her heels and stretching her feet across my lap, "that wasn't boring." I laughed, feeling weeks of tension finally release. Not exactly the wedding highlight I was planning on. Are you kidding? That was the most badass moment of my life, she grinned, the sparkler's light still dancing in her eyes. The look on his face when that recording played, priceless. I just wish he hadn't put us in that position, I said more seriously. 15 years of friendship gone in an instant. Olivia's smile softened. It didn't happen in an instant, though, did it? From what you've told me and what we heard on that recording, he'd been resenting your success for a long time. She was right, of course. The Derek who tried to destroy our wedding day wasn't the same person who'd been my college roommate, who'd helped me move apartments 3 times, who'd been there when my grandmother died. That Derek had been replaced by someone consumed with bitterness and jealousy, a transformation that had happened gradually, almost imperceptibly, until it culminated in today's betrayal. I keep thinking about what would have happened if we hadn't been prepared, I admitted, if I hadn't noticed the warning signs. But you did notice, Olivia said firmly. That's what matters, and honestly, even if we hadn't had the recording, I would have known he was lying. How? Because I know you, James Mitchell. I know your integrity, your honesty, your heart. She leaned forward and kissed me softly. No best man's speech could ever change that. As our car pulled away from the venue, I glanced back one last time. The Victorian mansion was aglow with warm lights, our friends and family still visible through the windows, celebrating our union. Despite Derek's best efforts, he hadn't diminished the joy of this day. If anything, his actions had only highlighted what truly mattered: the trust between Olivia and me, and the community of people who genuinely supported our marriage. The next morning, as we prepared to leave for our honeymoon in Bali, I received a text from Marcus. Thought you'd want to know. Derek checked out of the hotel at 6 a.m., took the Uber to the airport, not his apartment, bought a one-way ticket to Phoenix. I showed the message to Olivia as we waited for our airport shuttle. Phoenix, she questioned. Doesn't he have a distant cousin there or something? Second cousin, I confirmed. Barely knows him, but I guess he needed somewhere to escape to. She studied my face. Are you okay? I considered the question carefully. Was I okay? My oldest friendship had imploded spectacularly. Someone I had trusted completely had tried to destroy the most important day of my life out of pure jealousy. That kind of betrayal leaves a mark. But then I looked at Olivia, my partner, my wife, the woman who had stood beside me with unwavering faith even as chaos threatened to engulf us, and I knew the answer. I'm more than okay, I told her honestly. I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be, with exactly who I'm supposed to be with. She smiled, that radiant smile that had first captured my heart 4 years ago. Good answer, husband. I thought so, wife, I replied, taking her hand as our shuttle arrived. As we pulled away from the hotel, I didn't look back. Derek had chosen his path and I had chosen mine. The future, bright, promising, and Derek-free, was waiting, and I couldn't wait to step into it with Olivia by my side. It's been 6 months since our wedding day. The professional photos came back last week, hundreds of beautiful moments captured in perfect detail. The ceremony under the flower-laden arbor, our first kiss as husband and wife, the joyful chaos of the dance floor. There's even a stunning sunset shot of Olivia and me silhouetted against the pink-orange sky, her veil catching the breeze at just the right moment. Noticeably absent from the album, any photos of Derek. Our photographer, sensing the tension even before the speech incident, had apparently taken very few pictures of him. Those she did capture were easily edited out or discarded. It's strange how someone who was such a significant part of my life for 15 years has been so completely excised from its most important day. Olivia and I have settled into married life with surprising ease. Our apartment, the same one Derek used to visit weekly for game nights, has transformed with Olivia's nursing schedule and my remote work arrangement, allowing us to create a comfortable rhythm. We're saving for a house now, something with a yard for the dog we're planning to adopt, and eventually for children to play in. Derek hasn't tried to contact me since the wedding. According to mutual friends, he's still in Phoenix, working remotely for the same company but in a different division. He's deleted his social media accounts, or at least blocked everyone connected to me. It's as if he's trying to erase our shared history as thoroughly as I've removed him from my wedding album. I'd be lying if I said I never think about him. Sometimes a song will play that reminds me of our college road trips, or I'll pass the bar where we used to watch Sunday football games, and a pang of something, not quite grief, not quite anger, but a complex emotion somewhere in between, will hit me unexpectedly. Olivia noticed me lost in thought one evening as I scrolled through old photos on my laptop, pictures from before the wedding, before the betrayal, when Derek was still the friend I thought I knew. "Do you miss him?" she asked, settling beside me on the couch. "I miss who I thought he was," I answered honestly. "The person who stood by me through breakups and job rejections and my parents' divorce. But that person doesn't exist anymore. Maybe he never did." "People change," she said softly, "not always for the better." "What I can't figure out is when it happened," I admitted. "When did friendship turn to resentment? When did he start seeing my happiness as something that diminished his own?" Olivia considered this. Maybe it was always there in small doses. The little comments when you got a raise, the way he'd changed the subject when we talked about wedding plans, but it probably grew over time, feeding on his own disappointments until it consumed whatever genuine friendship was left. Her insight, as usual, cut straight to the heart of the matter. Derek's betrayal hadn't been a sudden decision, but the culmination of a slow-growing bitterness that had been nurturing for years, perhaps even since college when my grades were slightly better, or when I recovered more quickly from our shared heartbreaks. "You know what's ironic?" I said. "If he had just been honest about his feelings, if he'd told me he was struggling or feeling left behind, I would have done anything to help him. That's what friends do." "Some people can't admit when they're drowning," Olivia replied. "Their pride won't let them reach for the life preserver." Last week I received a LinkedIn notification that Derek had been promoted at his new position in Phoenix. I felt a brief impulse to send congratulations but resisted. Some bridges once burned can't be rebuilt, nor should they be. The foundation was too compromised from the start. Instead, I closed my laptop and joined Olivia in the kitchen, where she was attempting to recreate her grandmother's pancit recipe for our dinner guests, my sister and her new boyfriend, who she'd met at our wedding. When he caught the garter, she caught the bouquet. They'd been inseparable ever since, a happy accident amid the wedding day chaos. "Need help?" I asked, washing my hands. "Always," she smiled, handing me a knife and pointing to the vegetables that needed chopping. As we worked side by side, I reflected on what the whole Derek experience had taught me, about friendship, about trust, about the importance of addressing problems directly rather than letting resentment fester. Most importantly, it had shown me the true strength of my relationship with Olivia. Many couples might have been fractured by such a public attack on their wedding day. The doubt Derek tried to sow could have taken root, especially in the early, vulnerable days of marriage. But instead, the incident had only confirmed what I already knew. We were a team, facing life's challenges together with honesty and trust as our foundation. "What are you smiling about?" Olivia asked, catching my expression as I sliced bell peppers. "Just thinking about how lucky I am," I told her, "not despite what happened at the wedding, but maybe even because of it. We started our marriage by overcoming something that could have been devastating, and we did it together as a team. Plus, it makes for one hell of a story at dinner parties," she quipped. "Oh, you think your best man got drunk and hit on the maid of honor? Hold my beer." I laughed, pulling her close despite her protests about the noodles needing attention. "I love you, you know that." "I had some indication," she teased, then grew serious. "I love you too, and for what it's worth, I'm proud of how you handled everything with Derek, both at the wedding and after. You didn't let his betrayal change who you are." That, I realized, was perhaps the most important lesson of all. People will disappoint you. Trusted friends may reveal themselves to be something other than what you believed, but how you respond to betrayal says more about your character than the betrayal itself ever could. I chose not to let Derek's actions poison my ability to trust, to form friendships, to see the good in people. I chose to learn from the experience without becoming cynical because of it. And most importantly, I chose to focus on the overwhelming evidence that while one person had failed me spectacularly, so many others had shown up with love, support, and loyalty. The doorbell rang, announcing our dinner guests' arrival. As Olivia went to answer it, I looked around our home, the space we were building together, filled with photos of people who genuinely cared for us, mementos from our honeymoon, wedding gifts given with sincere good wishes. Derek had tried to destroy our perfect day. Instead, he'd only highlighted how perfect it truly was, not because everything went according to plan, but because when faced with unexpected chaos, we discovered exactly how strong we were together. And that, I decided as I went to greet our guests, was a wedding gift more valuable than anything on our registry. One year after our wedding, Olivia and I decided to host an anniversary dinner at our new house, a charming 3-bedroom craftsman with the yard we'd been dreaming of, in a quiet neighborhood just outside the city. We'd moved in 2 months earlier and were still getting used to the luxury of space after years in our apartment. We kept the guest list intimate. Both sets of parents, Olivia's grandmother who had flown in from Manila again, my sister and her boyfriend, now fiancé, thanks to their wedding day meet-cute, and a few close friends who had stood by us through the Derek debacle and everything after. As we prepared for the evening, arranging flowers and setting the large farmhouse table we'd splurged on as our first major furniture purchase, I found myself reflecting on how much had changed in a year. My promotion had turned into a department leadership role. Olivia had completed her specialized trauma certification and was now training new nurses. We had adopted a golden retriever mix named Biscuit, who is currently watching our dinner preparations with hopeful eyes. "Do you ever wonder what happened to him?" Olivia asked, seemingly reading my thoughts as she arranged place cards on the table. "Sometimes," I admitted, "but less and less as time passes." It was true, the sharp sting of Derek's betrayal had dulled to an occasional twinge of curiosity. According to our remaining mutual connections, he was still in Phoenix, had started dating someone new, and seemed to be doing well professionally. Good for him, I supposed. I didn't wish him ill, but I also had no desire to reconnect. The doorbell rang, signaling our first guest's arrival. As the house filled with loved ones, the warmth of conversation and laughter pushed any thoughts of Derek firmly to the background. My mother brought her famous apple pie. Olivia's father carried in a case of wine from a vineyard they'd visited on their last anniversary. My sister couldn't stop showing off her engagement ring, while her fiancé looked on with besotted pride. Midway through dinner, as we passed platters of Olivia's grandmother's Filipino specialties alongside my mother's New England classics, the doorbell rang again. I exchanged a puzzled glance with Olivia. Everyone we'd invited was already here. "Probably a delivery," I said, excusing myself from the table. When I opened the front door, there was no delivery person, just a medium-sized package on the porch, wrapped in simple brown paper with no visible shipping label. For a moment, caution made me hesitate. An unmarked package delivered on our wedding anniversary? After everything that had happened with Derek, paranoia didn't seem entirely unreasonable. "What is it?" Olivia called from behind me. "Not sure," I replied, picking up the surprisingly heavy package and bringing it inside. "There's no label." Our guests watched curiously as I set it on the side table in the entryway. "Should we open it?" I asked Olivia. "Of course," she said, practical as always. "If it's a bomb, at least we'll all go together." "Olivia," her mother gasped, but the rest of the table laughed, the tension broken. I carefully unwrapped the brown paper to reveal a wooden box with a simple brass latch. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a vintage bottle of Macallan 18, an exceptionally expensive scotch, and an envelope. "Secret admirer," my sister teased. I opened the envelope with growing curiosity. The handwriting on the card inside was immediately familiar, though I hadn't seen it in a year. My heart rate quickened as I began to read. "James and Olivia. I debated for months whether to send this. You probably threw this in the trash as soon as you saw my handwriting, and I wouldn't blame you. But on the off chance you're still reading, I needed to mark this day with something other than the memory of how I tried to ruin it. There's no excuse for what I did. None. I've spent the past year in therapy trying to understand why I was willing to destroy a 15-year friendship and hurt 2 people who had never done anything but support me. The answer isn't pretty: jealousy, insecurity, and a toxic belief that your happiness somehow diminished mine. I won't ask for forgiveness, I don't deserve it, but I wanted you to know that the wake-up call of that day changed my life. Not just because I lost my oldest friend and had to relocate out of shame, but because it forced me to confront the ugliest parts of myself. The scotch is for toasting to a marriage that survived its first challenge with grace and strength. A marriage I foolishly tried to damage but only made stronger. Be happy, you both deserve it. Derek. I read the note twice before wordlessly passing it to Olivia. The table had gone quiet, our guests sensing the weight of the moment. Olivia read it carefully, her expression unreadable, before looking up at me. "Well," she said finally, "that was unexpected." "What is it?" her father asked, protective concern in his voice. "It's from Derek," I explained, watching their expressions shift from curiosity to various degrees of shock and discomfort. "The nerve of that man," my mother muttered, "after what he did." "What does he want?" my sister asked warily. Nothing, apparently, Olivia replied, rereading the note. It seems to be just an acknowledgement and an expensive bottle of scotch. I examined the bottle. It was indeed the real thing, not some elaborate prank. A bottle that cost several $100s at minimum. Are you okay? Olivia asked me quietly. I considered the question carefully. Was I angry? Surprisingly, no. Suspicious? A little, perhaps. But mostly I felt an unexpected sense of closure, like a door that had been left slightly ajar had finally clicked shut. I'm okay, I assured her, just processing. What will you do with it? Her grandmother asked, gesturing to the scotch. I looked at Olivia, silently conferring. After a moment, she gave me a small nod. I think, I said, lifting the bottle, we'll share it, not as a toast to Derek or his apology, but to us, to surviving what he tried to do, and to the year we've built since then. As I opened the bottle and my father fetched glasses from the cabinet, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Not forgiveness, exactly. Derek was right that some betrayals run too deep for simple forgiveness, but perhaps something like peace, an acknowledgement that the past was firmly in the past and that Olivia and I had moved forward stronger than before. To 1 year down, I said, raising my glass once everyone had a small pour of the amber liquid. And a lifetime to go, Olivia finished, her eyes meeting mine with the same unwavering trust that had carried us through that tumultuous wedding day. As our guests echoed the toast, I thought about how life rarely follows the neat, predictable path we envision. A year ago, I had lost my best friend in the most painful, public way imaginable. Today, that same person had sent a gesture of remorse that I never expected to receive. People can surprise you, sometimes by how low they can sink, but occasionally by their capacity for growth and change. Derek's note wouldn't erase what he'd done, and it didn't mean he would ever be part of our lives again. But it did suggest that perhaps the story of his betrayal had a different ending than I'd imagined, not just for Olivia and me, but for him as well. After dinner, as our guests moved to the living room for coffee and dessert, Olivia found me in the kitchen, loading the dishwasher. What are you thinking? She asked, wrapping her arms around me from behind. I'm thinking that a year ago I would have thrown that bottle in the trash without opening it, I admitted, and now I can appreciate that people are complicated, that someone can do something terrible and still be capable of reflection and regret. Olivia nodded against my shoulder. Does that mean you forgive him? I turned to face her, considering the question seriously. I don't think forgiveness is a single moment, a switch you flip from hurt to healed. It's more of a process. Today felt like a step in that direction, but I'm not there yet. I might never be completely there. That's fair, she said, and very wise, Mr. Mitchell. I have my moments, Mrs. Mitchell, I smiled, kissing her forehead. As we rejoined our guests, the note and bottle safely tucked away in a drawer, I realized that Derek had unintentionally given us one final gift, a reminder that while we can't control how others treat us, we always have a choice in how we respond. We can let betrayal harden us, or we can use it to appreciate the genuine relationships that remain. Olivia and I had chosen the latter, and watching her laugh with my sister, seeing our parents bonding over shared grandparent aspirations, feeling the warmth of our new home filled with people who truly cared for us, I knew we'd made the right choice. Some wedding gifts you register for, others arrive unexpectedly, a year later, teaching lessons you never knew you needed to learn.
James, thank you for sharing your story with us today. What you experienced was a profound betrayal from someone you trusted for 2 decades. But your response reveals a powerful truth. Preparation transforms victimhood into empowerment. This isn't about revenge. It's about refusing to let someone else's jealousy define your most important day, and instead creating a moment that showcased the very strength and unity your marriage is built upon. I'm Eliza Quinn, and remember, here on Wedding Day Justice, veils off, justice on.